Buckle up, dudes. This is the ride. This is Death Note. Death Note is famous for those people for which it is famous. It's an anime from manga, and when I first saw it in 2009-ish, it's from 2006. They said, "Oh, you like Hikaru No Go, so you're going to love Death Note." And the Peanut Gallery is already rolling her eyes to heaven because you know what? That is the shittiest recommendation ever. Really, Hikaru No Go is very mundane, sweet, a little bit naive, always nice,
thoughtful, toggles along.
Thoughtful, toggles along indeed, and Death Note is absolutely nothing of the kind. It is a roller coaster ride that ends in a very, very sudden stop. Oh my god. Really. However, I did rewatch it recently, like this year, because it is in a way a new story, a modern story that we hadn't heard before. This is why it became so famous in 2006 when it came out on Japanese television, and I think it almost immediately went to American television. So there's an American dub and there's a Japanese original. I watched the Japanese original because, duh. So my take on this is the way I watched it in 2009-ish, as somebody who had cursory knowledge of animes and stuff like that. I mean, I'm a Westerner watching a Japanese thing. So the story is a young man, 17. He does 4 things in life: eats, sleeps, studies for exams, takes exams. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's his life. Until one day he sees in the grass a notebook that's been dropped by somebody. He doesn't have time for that, so he just picks it up and sticks it in his bag and figure out whatever later. When later comes, he's at home, opens it up, it says, whosever name you write in this book shall die after 40 seconds. He sort of goes, okay, college prank. He throws it in the corner and that's it. The only other thing that is interesting about this chap, his name is Light. Light Yagami. His father is a police commissioner. I think you'd probably call the commissioner in English. One step higher than detective, basically. So he's from a police family. He has the police TV on. They have TV. In Japan, they have enough channels that you can have a channel that does dedicated police stuff. That I don't know, because I don't live in Japan. I don't know this, but that's what it appears to be. He has it on as background noise, and at some point there is a live broadcast of a kidnapping. A convicted murderer has escaped, has taken hostage a kindergarten with kids in it and teachers. And Light stops and remembers, oh, I have this stupid notebook. I'm sure it's a prank, but I'm going to try and just write this guy's name. Because the guy is named with a picture, full name, which is, of course, in Japanese, is a whole bunch of kanji, Japanese characters, which I did know at the time, and they do make it clear in the anime, you have to write these things correctly or it's wrong. Like, way wrong. So, he writes down the guy's name, waits 40 seconds, and nothing happens. So he sort of goes, okay, whatever. And then on the television, because it's a live feed, and they didn't actually have eyes on the guy. It was just the outside of the building. And then people are coming out and said, well, the guy just keeled over. Just like that. He grabbed his heart and keeled over. The Light goes, oh my god, it worked. And he has a I don't know, a nervous breakdown, a fast nervous breakdown in 50 seconds. And then anime makes a mistake. It makes a kind of fold in the story where I sort of go, why? And I'm going to explain why before I tell you what the fold is, because it's weird. These animes are often made from a manga, which is, of course, a little book thingy here, manga. Comic strip thingy.
Yeah. A
graphic novel. But that is how we get it. If we get it in this way, because I got the anime first, and then you have the people who read manga, they get the manga first. That is not how this story was started. It was started in a magazine that only published like the first X pages, maybe 10 pages, like the first chapter. So I think there's like 4 or 5, no, maybe 6 chapters in one of these booklets. So this magazine is meant for 11 to 18-year-olds, and it's full of flashy anime that has monster this and battle that and I don't know what. And this story starts really, there's not much to see here. And the only thing that is to see is actually a little later on. So they folded up the story to show the little later on bits. The monster. There is a monster. So that the magazine actually has something to show, because there's not much to see here. So that is actually pretty much like Hikaru No Go. There's not much to see there. There's just normal guy, weird situation. That's it. So I'm going to tell you the story the way it should have been done. Light realizes that, oh my god, this thing works. And then he starts to look at the inside of the Death Note, because it's not the only rule that's written there. There's more rules, and he starts to read them. And one of the rules is you have to spell the name correctly. You not only have to spell the name correctly, which, like I said, with kanji, that's complicated. It's more complicated than English spelling would be. But you also have to visualize the person involved, so you don't so you don't kill a person with the similar name. I mean, you have to name correctly, but if the name is John Jones, you don't want to kill every John Jones. So you have to actually also picture the person. And that's why that is so interesting on the television in Japan. They show not when the report of the hostage taker in the kindergarten came on. It showed a picture of the guy with his full name. And I was, I live in the Netherlands. They'd never do that. They'd not even they'd never show a picture.
Never a picture, and only first name and the first letter of the last name.
Exactly. So that is okay. But it turns out that in Japan, they don't not only show all these things, there are actually lists that are published of criminals. Criminals that are convicted of crimes, apparently there are lists of these things, and they are just published. I don't know how that works. Wouldn't be happening here. So that makes it very particular for a Japanese story to do it in a Japanese way. Light, once he gets over his shock, so Light wants to figure out how this works, and when he is just going to the supermarket to get some stuff for the house, he sees a motorcycle guy with a couple of motorcycle friends harassing a lady. It's evening, harassing a lady pretty strongly. Basically, they're undressing her in the middle of the streets. They're trying to pull her clothes off, and the guy shouts his own name because he's the great whatever it was. And Light starts to write down his name and try to get the right spelling, and then give it 40 seconds, and and the guy dies. And I agree with Light that this was not a nice guy, and I agree that what the guy was doing was something they should have been going to jail for. Should he have died for it? Maybe not so much. I do realize that Light has one weapon in his hand and it kills. It's the only thing it does. But did this guy deserve to die? And when I was watching this, I was going, you know what? This is a morality tale. This is what this thing is about. It's when is it right to kill? When is it not right to kill? So I was thinking, okay, I understand this. This is a morality tale. Okay, let's go on. Light, it works, and Light starts. Meanwhile, back in hell, I suppose it's hell. There's the monster. There's a scene of the monsters talking. One of the monsters has dropped his death note in the world because it seemed like fun. And now he sort of has to go and actually, sort of take a look at the fun and maybe retrieve the death note, or the Hell King is going to be angry, that sort of thing. So just go, okay, let's go do that. It's about when he arrives on Earth to go take a look at the hell at what happened to his book. It's 5 days later, and he arrives at Light's house, and then this is interesting. This monster, I'll show you a picture. It just arrives at Light's house, in his room, and all Light does is look up and say, I was waiting for you. Are you here to come and take me off to hell? And says, and the monster is called Ryuk. His moniker is Shinigami. And for people who watch anime a lot, they use Shinigami for a lot of different death-related monsters or people in charge of dying and death. Because Shine means death and dying, and Gami is Kami is of course God, and if you connect it, it's Gami, of course. So it means literally death god, but it's not what that actually does in the story. And in any of these stories, when they use Shinigami, what they mean is somebody who's in charge of people who are dead or dying or are transported. So what he is a reaper. He is a death reaper. And to me, to my Western eyes, he looks like a demon. He has all the hallmarks that a demon should have. Not a devil. A devil actually tempts you to do things. A demon usually just is there when bad things happen. That's what Ryuk is, a demon. So he's a reaper demon. And Light is not surprised to see him, and he asks, "Are you going to reap me?" And Ryuk says, "No. I'm just here to observe the fun. I've given you this death note. You should go and use it." And then Light says, "Well, I have. In the last 5 days, since that second murder, he has been systematically killing all the convicted criminals of Japan and the Greater Tokyo area in particular. Anybody who's been convicted of a major crime, he's been killing them."
Oops.
And all this happens in the first 2 episodes. The entire anime is basically in the first 2 episodes. If you want to watch the first 2 episodes, you know it all. All the rest, all the other 35 episodes, is just watching this
Train wreck.
This train wreck hit the wall, spectacularly. It is brilliant because I've actually divvied up the story in 5 pieces. Each piece is brilliant to watch. It's like because Light is he is brilliant, but the detective they put against him also is brilliant, and you get this fight to the death. And you realize it's to the death at some point because neither of them are going to let up. They can't. The Light won't, and the detective can't. So, for a genre, this is more. It is a sort of a cross between a horror story and a detective story. It has all the intricacies, all the must fit together of a detective story. That's why there's actually a mistake in the original manga, that the manga came out 2003, the anime 2006, so quite soon after. They realized in a mistake. They fixed it because it needs to fit that closely together, and it's very difficult to do, especially on the go, because the manga was written on the go, and then you can't go back because it's already been published. As the story goes along, Light keeps saying, "Oh, I want to rid the world of evil and make the place more livable." In some adjacent research, I found that on the whole, Japanese people believe they have a criminality problem. So I think that's why he's fixating on that. That's why he thinks it's a good thing to just exterminate all criminals. Systematically. Ooh, it's very uncomfortable to watch. And when the detective shows up, the way this thing is written is like a roller coaster ride, and everything fits together in such a beautiful way that I don't want to tell you the story. You just go and watch it. When the detective shows up onto the scene, he is actually the complete antithesis of Light. Light is a young man. He's in animes the Japanese, even though he's a Japanese character, he's blonde and has light eyes and light skin and all that. I'm a little bit uncomfortable. But this is 2006. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the way the Japanese sometimes portray themselves and then say, "Oh, this is a Japanese person." He is young. He is very handsome. He actually has a young lady who wants him. He doesn't want her, but the detective, roughly the only two things that the detective and Light have in common is they're Japanese and they're young and male. So 3 things. He is stoops over. He has black hair going every which way. He's
the detective.
The detective. He's like a human version of a goblin, basically. So he looks. I don't know if he looks repulsive, but I don't think he looks. He's not supposed to look attractive, at least. Socially awkward. Walks around without socks on when everybody should be wearing socks. He holds things like this instead of like a normal person. He's weird, but he is fully as brilliant as Light is, smart as Button. The best detective in the world is who they call in, because they figure out somebody is killing these people, and we don't understand why. So they get Interpol in, and they get this detective in. His name is L, and that's annoying because Light on one hand and L on the other.
Mm-hmm. So Yin and Yang.
Yeah, but why give them practically the same name? I don't understand
Because
that.
it's yin and yang.
Yeah, maybe. Also, L and light are completely unpronounceable for.
They always get
Yeah,
names with L's in them.
just like the way that light looks with the hair too light, the skin too light. They're trying to make something that doesn't exist, and it actually makes me uncomfortable to watch that part of it. Apart from the fact that this whole thing makes me uncomfortable. Because
all the killing and stuff.
All the killing and stuff. Because one thing you realize, yes, we're looking at light, we're following light. He's the bad guy. This guy is a psychopath. He takes to murdering like a duck takes to water. He's not surprised when their demon shows up, and he's willing to murder. And this guy, this motorcycle guy that he kills, his second murder, who was an unpleasant character and may not deserve to die, but okay, if you really think that's going to help the world. But no, the almost after his first set of murders, he goes straight on to killing FBI agents because they're on his tail. That's the only reason he kills them, is because they're after him. And I was watching this, and especially the first one. He does one and then he does a set. I'm going, any justification that you had for exterminating bad guys, yes, I know, the weapon you have can only kill. It's the only thing it can do. It can kill. It can't just say, okay, now we incarcerate you for forever, or we send you to a different realm, or anything like that. All it can do is kill. So that's the only weapon you have. And I understand that you're willing to, if you're willing to use it. I wouldn't be, but that's my moral point. I would not be doing that. But if you're willing to do that, then you should, and you have a justification, then stick to your justification. The FBI, there was an FBI guy following him, and that made him uncomfortable, and so he retaliated. But if you think about it, what can the FBI do to him? All he has done is write down a name in a notebook. That there is a supernatural power attached to that, the justice system is not going to care. So they cannot prove anything other than you wrote down a name in a book. Mm-hmm. And that's actually the problem that L has. L, the detective, has the problem that he's fighting a force that does not exist in his world. He's trying to find the person who keeps killing the people by letting them have a heart attack. How is he doing? How is this bad guy doing this in a actual world? Because it's impossible. L has to actually try and figure out an impossibility, and it frustrates him greatly. Until the actual first time when the name Shinigami, with the idea Shinigami comes up, he actually falls off his chair, literally falls off his chair in shock that the supernatural is into this, and he doesn't believe it. He categorically refuses it until the Shinigami is actually standing in front of his face. Because, duh! And the struggle between L and light is absolutely worth the price of admission. Absolutely. What's one of the bad things about this show is the way they treat women. There's the female character, Misa. I'm going to just call her Misa because Misa is going to annoy me real. It annoyed me in the show as well. So Misa also gets a death note, different death notes. There is a backstory there. They messed that up because they skipped the backstory and then later don't fill it in. There is a reason she has the death note. It does exactly the same as Light's death note. these Death Note do have more rules, and the more rules come, there's more options you can do. You can, instead of just letting somebody die of a heart attack in 40 seconds, you can actually make them do stuff within reason and make them die of something else within reason, with limits, with time limits and physical limits, and also human limits. The interesting limit that they put on human, so it should be within in the human's ability, should be in physical ability. So you can't say, oh, you when the person is in Tokyo, they will you say they will within the hour they will jump off the Eiffel Tower. In Paris is impossible, so then the person just dies of a heart attack and doesn't do that. You can make people do what they would naturally do. So you can tell them first they're going to go to the supermarket and buy everything with all their savings, and then they're going to jump off a bridge. You could let them do that because they do have savings and they can do that. The one thing that I had a problem with is in the rules that it specifically states is that suicide is always a human condition and is always doable. That's a different thing because there's in Japanese terms I'm sure, yes, but European terms maybe not so much. So you have more options. So when Misa gets the Death Note, every female character in this thing their existence only is related to a male character. To the point that Misa's only thing in life is to find the Kira. Kira is the name of the phenomenon of all these criminals dying suddenly. Kira did it, and Kira, of course, is killer, but then Japaneseified, so Kira. She wants to find Kira because Kira killed the murderer of her entire family. Her family was murdered by an ex-murderer, and this guy nearly got off from being prosecuted, and Kira just killed him in the Kira way. And so she wants to find Kira, so she uses the Death Note to have a news announcer play a tape of supposed Kira, where this Kira tries to contact Kira. And the only way you can do something with the Death Note is by having them die at the end. So she kills a news announcer for no reason. She does find him, and what does she want from him? Oh, you're a nice young man. I want to hug you and kiss you and... Light, she's so out of luck. Light, you see, is a psychopath, an actual psychopath, and he's willing to use her for whatever means he wants. When he uses her up, as well. He's a psychopath. That's why it makes it so uncomfortable to watch. It's interesting to watch, but it's uncomfortable because he's a straight up psychopath. And psychopaths have their own idea of how the world should be. He actually says it. Light imagines himself to be a god, because with the Death Note he is a god. Really, an actual god in the Western sense of godhood. He's there to rid the world of the evil of the criminal, and he's the one to do it. And if he can use Misa and her Death Note, because then he will. He actually, the only way he can accept Misa is because the first thing she does is just give him the Death Note, her Death Note, for safekeeping. Because it is possible for one Death Note owner to write the name of another Death Note owner, and then that person will die. So he is sort of going, when she shows up, he sort of goes, and then she says, take it, please.
Yeah.
And then he takes it, and then she has no power. I mean, basically the only way he can accept her is by giving him all the power, because he's a psychopath. She's not even the only female character that this happens to. It's really... Okay. What makes this thing... Why you keep looking and not looking away is you try...
It's a train wreck!
It's a train wreck. And you actually... Because...
It's too fascinating to look away.
Exactly. And I was waiting for that quintessential morality tale moment where he realizes he made a mistake, or you as the viewer realizes he's gone off the deep end. And the thing is, it doesn't happen. That it just, the whole thing, it runs, and it runs like it runs in two pieces. There's a sort of a season 1 in the first 24 episodes, and then the next there's another 13 left, and that's what the second part of the story is. There is an actual break there in the original story. So it runs out. There is only one way this can end. It's a fight to the death, and I'm going to put some spoilers in here because I have no choice. I'm sorry. L loses the first battle. However, Light continues. Light actually sluices himself into the investigation, which is a completely modern criminal thing to do. Is get the criminal comes into the investigation because duh, and that's the best way to get information. So he sluices himself into the investigation. But the one thing that a criminal of light, of a psychopath of light's quality, maybe doesn't realize is that where there is one L and they die, another will come. So an M comes and an N comes, and it will never end, and it must end at some point, and it ends with Light losing at the end. He loses at the end because it cannot end any other way. This is
It'll keep going forever.
Yeah,
it's just a matter of time.
Also, the nature of the Death Note is that whenever he does there are a couple of functions he can add to the Death Note that actually can cost him part of himself. One of the first things, and this is like in the very first episode when Ryuk first shows up, they talk about the nature of the Death Note and of. I think it's like the second thing he says when Light asks, "Are you here to come and reap me?" And he says, and then Ryuk says, "No, I'll wait until you're ready." The user of a Death Note will go to neither heaven nor hell. Is pretty much what he says, and I think at the end that's how it actually ends, because it doesn't end in a funeral or in an afterlife. It ends with a corpse on the floor, a very pretty light-shaped corpse on the floor. They do a lovely shot of it, of course, with the end credits running all over it of the last episode. It's beautiful. Because it cannot end any other way. It cannot end any other way. But I'm still missing, where is my morality moment? I mean, right at the end, when he realized he's lost, he goes to pieces. But that doesn't feel like a morality moment. Like okay, this is clear what this story is trying to tell. And I was going back in my mind, when is it? Is it when he manages to kill L in a backstabbing way after befriending L? Is it earlier when he kills 15 FBI agents, or earlier when he kills the guy who is the motorcycle guy who is just undressing a girl in an inappropriate way? Or is it the very first one? Or when is it? For a Western viewer, I don't think it's not in there. It's not in there. But for an Eastern viewer, and this is where my later knowledge comes in a Zen Buddhist way, is when, because they talk about the way and the way of your life. When does he get off the way? And I'm trying to find that here. When does he get off the way? Does he get off the way with the very first murder, or when he picks up the Death Note, or even when Ryuk drops the Death Note, which is completely unrelated to Light? And I'm seeing the peanut gallery note.
Well, yeah, I had already written down is he was screwed from the moment that he picked up the book.
Yeah.
His life was over.
Yeah, and that is, I think, the Oriental take on it, the Zen Buddhist take on it, this is a Zen Buddhist morality tale, is that he was screwed before he picked up the Death Note.
And the problem with being screwed and still being alive, if you believe in that life is circular and you get to go many go-arounds and you achieve enlightenment if you go the right direction, you go towards enlightenment. If you're off the way during your lifetime, then there's no point to your life, because you can't get back on the way because it's already over. Yeah. You might as well just pack it in, kill yourself, and whatever.
And this is the reason.
He did not do that.
This is the reason why I think he was not surprised when Ryuk showed up, and he wasn't very worried when he asked Ryuk, "Are you going to read me right now?" He wasn't surprised, he wasn't worried, because he knew his life was over. And basically, he decided he was going to go out with a bang instead of a whimper. And then Ryuk tells him, and this is after he's not surprised, tells him, will go neither heaven nor hell, meaning you will not be reincarnating, you will not have a second go. This is it. And then he goes off it in a big way. He was already killing non-stop, but now he has no reason not to do.
He lost his humanity the moment he realized what the book was.
Yeah, but the unfair thing is that he doesn't really realize it until he's already used it, because he thinks it's a prank. Which is what in the Western, if you look at this as a Western story, he is unfairly screwed. This feels very unfair to me, because he does not know what the rules are, and he's already been committed to the events before he knows what the rules actually are. I would still say that if I personally would be given a death note and it says you write a name and in 40 seconds somebody will die, I'd probably not use it, because I don't want to even be anywhere near that kind of thing.
And he didn't have a problem with it.
Well, he
thought it was funny.
He thought it was a prank, and then he had a reason to use it because of the hostage situation, which was a real situation that was really dangerous for the people involved. He did something. With that first murder, he did something good. As far as would
that be comparable to a police officer trying to stop this guy and shooting him to death in order to do so?
It's not ideal, but it's better than the alternative.
Yeah.
And but he didn't know what the consequences were, which is, to a Western eye, that's unfair. As such, oh my God, this is a great story. There's a lot to talk about this story. You had something written down?
Yes. So my earlier question was, is light actually death? Because you do say he's not going to heaven, he's not going to hell. So the moment that he either started using the Death Note or he picked up the Death Note, whatever the moment was that his destiny changed, or his situation in the universe changed, from you're now no longer going to be a person that is going to reach enlightenment and go through many incarnations. You don't get any more shot. This is it for you. So is he actually a form of death?
Anime presents you with a very pretty corpse at the end. That is all the statement it makes.
Mm-hmm.
It makes no moral judgment at all. It presents the detective as repulsive, the normal people as very mundane and boring, and Light as the handsomest guy around.
Glamorous.
And Misa is also the other Death Note holder. Is also glamorous. She actually has a career as an actress.
Mm-hmm.
So it's. In a way, it doesn't quite know what it needs to feel about that, because it's glamorizing old bad people and goblinizing anybody who's actually fighting against death. The first FBI agent, and that's when this is the point where I said you were an asshole. The first FBI agent he kills, he manipulates the guy into blah. He had a fiancée, and the fiancée who was even smarter than the FBI agent, because she was FBI, but she was going to get married and stop being FBI. They were both getting married. The fiancée shows up and starts sniffing around, and he makes her commit suicide in a somebody who was not on the path of suicide at all. Yes, her fiancé was dead, but she was intent on killing, and that's why I was really upset with the suicide rule, because suicide is always an option. No, I don't think this girl would have committed suicide. He made her sad enough to commit suicide. That's a horrible thing to do. And
he completely and utterly lost his humanity. And the question is, did he have it in the first place? Because we don't know that he had any sort of character, because his life consisted, you started with, of eating, sleeping, studying for tests and taking tests. So he had no personality whatsoever.
We never get to see Light before he has the Death Note. We never get to see Misa before she has the Death Note. So
we don't know if these people actually had personalities. If they actually were people, could it be they were?
The only indication that we have is that Light's father, who does play a big part, and he's actually an interesting part of the story. We see the personality of Light's father. And I say that Light is a psychopath. I also say his father is a psychopath. The difference between Light and his father is 30 years experience and the absence of a Death Note. And that is why the dad is a police commissioner fighting crime in that way, and
there your yin and your yang is back, right? Because L was also police. And he is smart. They're both smart. And he's the other side. It's like, what can you do with your power? Do you actually serve the greater good? Serve society? And that way you are the judge and not jury, but you are the judge. Or do you just go completely rogue and are judge, jury, and executioner without any concern for human law, for social norms, for anything that's going on, and also for relative to the crime, because one crime, okay, so you had a kidnapper, and he could have, in the heat of the moment, he could have been killed by police officers, but these other crimes, not every crime needs to end in the criminal being dead. So the whole judge, jury, and executioner part of it was really.
Yeah, and the nature of the Death Note and the nature of Death Note possession, if you possess it, there's a subplot of where you can the Reaper that is associated with the Death Note, which is, there are some issues with some slight plot issues there, but it's fine. You can show a Reaper to a person by having them touch the Death Note. They don't own the Death Note, but they touch it, and then the Reaper associated with that Death Note is now visible. This is how L saw the Reaper, and nearly had an epileptic fit because duh. But the nature of the Death Note stays unanswered. I have exactly the same questions here. Does your basic personality change when you use the Death Note? We don't know. What does the Death Note do in terms of souls? Because Oriental, the Zen Buddhism doesn't talk about souls, but we in the West, we talk about souls. And this is what happens to, in a Western sense, to light at the end, is his soul is destroyed. That which would in Zen Buddhism would reincarnate, that part of him is destroyed.
But was it destroyed at the end when he dies, or was it destroyed when he picked up the Death Note?
Well, that is a Zen Buddhist.
Or was he even born with a soul?
Well, that is.
We don't know that.
We don't know that, but that's there's a Zen Buddhist questions, but a Western question would be, because just touching or being associated with this Death Note does change people. The entire in the end, the entire task force ends up touching it, and everybody sees Ryuk. How does it change you? What does it do in terms of souls? They don't never answer that because we don't know. What the basic nature of Death Notes are and how it works, we don't know. It stays unanswered. What we get at the end is a very pretty corpse. One of the weirder things about the Death Note is that it's actually written, the rules in this Japanese anime, the rules in the Death Note are written in English and then are subtitled in Japanese. That's a little bit problematic because of course the Japanese translation is going to be perfect because that was the original, but the English ones are not quite as perfect. So you got English on the screen in the anime, then there is going to be Japanese subtitling to that, and there's English subtitling to that. All right, okay. Well, the subtitling goes with the original English, which is, like I said, it's the problem because that is not what the Japanese people are reading. Yeah. So any mistake in original written thing, it's there is a couple of scenes of international stuff where you actually have non-Japanese people doing Japanese things, and of course the FBI agent that trails him is not non-Japanese, but his Japanese, of course, is perfect, and it's okay. I understand it's an anime.
What about the Interpol people? Are they European? Or?
The Interpol people, so that's the FBI agent and his fiancée. His fiancée is actually Japanese, but he is not Japanese, but his Japanese is perfect.
Okay, fair enough. It can happen.
Actually, no, it can't, because there was actually a person interspersed who complicated, but that was far-fetched to have that person speak perfect Japanese. I understand, but I have a closing thing, but I do believe Peanut Gallery has questions.
Yes, I have several questions. So, back to the Buddhism. What little I know of it anyway. So, Light loses his way, effectively. Pretty much at the get-go, because he decides he circumvents the law, because he thinks he's doing the right thing, because he can. So he's taking the law into his own hands, and after that he never stops doing that. Fine. Okay.
The takes his law in his own hands not even an issue.
It's not even in his...
No, it's not even a talking point or a thinking point or anything like that.
So that was really one of the questions I have, is like law. Like literally not just L hunting him, the FBI hunting him, but literally the fact that he is completely... just law does not mean anything to him.
No, the only person who makes any indication of that it is important is the dad, but only because having a murderer run around is a nuisance.
It's inconvenient.
It's untidy. It's more of untidiness. L, I do think that if L had more time to get over the fact that it was a supernatural phenomena that he was dealing with, might have been able to come to some sort of moral judgment on it, but it went so fast he had no chance. Which is actually a shame, because I think that would have been interesting to see what would L do with the Death Note. But he doesn't get to be in that position.
If L would have had the opportunity to use the Death Note, he might have gone off the deep end as well. Is it the singer or the song, right?
Yeah.
Is it the Death Note itself, or is it the person that is doing something with the Death Note?
This anime does not answer the question.
No.
Doesn't mean that this question doesn't get answered at some point, but this anime doesn't do it.
But does it even pose the question?
No.
It doesn't.
No.
It just is. So that's where I get my yin and yang again, because you're basically looking at this side of the spectrum. This is what can happen if somebody can be judged during
She's pointing that way.
Yeah, I'm pointing that way. That side of the spectrum.
Pointing that way.
It can, and then yin and yang, of course, have a footprint in the other realm as well. So are they two halves of the same coin, or are they truly opposites? Or doesn't it even matter, because there is no judgment and morality at all about this?
There is no value judgment in this thing at all. The only person who has any sort of value judgment is the dad and Light, because psychopathy, if you're a psychopath, it means you don't care about anything other than yourself. There are one exception. They do have some loyalty to family, and he has some loyalty towards his dad, not endlessly, and the way that dad views him is important to Light, but not important enough to change his ways. It is important enough to not burden his dad before the guy dies, because this is a horror story. Everybody dies. So, no value judgment for anything, ever, except that dad's opinion is the only one who makes any sort of judgment. And the dad doesn't like it.
Okay. Meta question. Could the Death Note be an analogy for a samurai sword? And with a samurai sword, I mean the type of sword that is so lethal that when you draw it, somebody will die. Because used in anger, you slice a person in half, really. So this weapon is binary, and the Death Note book seems to be binary. It's like you either use it or you don't.
Yeah.
And when you use it, it is absolute. So this Death Note is an absolute weapon.
Yeah, it can only end with a killing. Yes.
And so if it's an absolute weapon with only ever one outcome, and you either decide to use it or you don't, then you have absolute power corrupts absolutely. So the moment he picked up, now back to the beginning, he picks up the book, he is corrupted. Yeah?
Absolute power corrects absolutely.
Yeah, so we got to the same point. Yeah.
Yes, and that's why it's actually the dad versus Light is interesting, because I still think that dad is what Light would have been if he had not had been given a Death Note and he had gone on with his life.
Time.
Because
he doesn't get any time, because he's
just like L, he gets no time
he's
either.
Either a high school student or he's a university student, but he has basically not had time to become a person, and this just sweeps him away.
Yeah.
And he's not even enough of a person to be bothered about it, because he's like, that's it. So he's not going to
Misa gets more personality before they get the Death Note than he does. He is an empty vessel. That's it. Because Misa actually had the background of her family being murdered, and that gives you something. It's not just nothing. And the family that light comes from is a box standard 2006, 2003, 2006 Japanese middle class family of police commissioner, but not quite as high as commissioner, just above detective. I have to look up what that is.
Lieutenant?
Probably lieutenant, yeah. So he's a police lieutenant. His mom is a stay-at-home mom. He has a nice sister who comes to light to help him with his homework. Everybody's nice. They gave him space. They gave him all the space and food he needs to do what he needs to do, which is pass exams. That's what he needs to do in life. And I think in 2006 there were a lot of 17-year-olds that were doing that. Things has changed now a little bit, but at that time that is what you did when you were 17. You were trying to get into college. You eat and breathe exams. It's so middle class. There's nothing there. There's no trauma. There's no history. It is so normal. And yet he is a psychopath. And yet the Death Note falls in his hand, and he starts murdering.
But if he had not had that happen to him, and he would have just been dropped into the university that he managed to get into, and they would have given him a law degree or a law education. He would have, and he would have just gone on and said, "Oh, here are law books. I will just apply."
Yeah, he was going. Actually, I'm not even sure that they actually mention what kind of university he does. He does get in because time does go on. Oh. He gets in and he does really well. He becomes Japanese version of valedictorian and all that kind of thing. But I don't even think they even mention what he studies, because I think he's going to just study law and become a policeman. That's how he slots into the investigation, because he is the son of a police commissioner, and he's smart, and they need any living body at this point, because everybody's scared to death of Kira, because Kira can kill with just knowing your name and your face. So everybody has an alias on the task force. This is why L is so hard to catch for Light, because nobody knows his real name. And trying to figure that out takes so much effort. Do you have more questions?
Just is it actually written by the same person as the Hikaru No Go
No.
series?
No. The reason that it was recommended to me is because the artist is the same. But the artist simply draws what is asked of him. It's beautiful art, by the way, which brings us actually back to the closing thing. One of the things that is visually in this thing is Ryuk, the demon, the demon, and what he does. He does very little. The only thing he does is drop the Death Note, and then sort of hangs around. Occasionally, you can't even send him for a message. I mean, in all of the whole thing, he does like two things, because Light asks him, and because he thinks it's omoshiroi, he thinks it's entertaining. And the only other thing he does is eat apples. He loves apples, and so he eats apples all the time. And in Western culture, apples have a very strong metaphor. It also turns out some in Eastern culture. In Western culture, knowledge and prosperity and all these things. In some Japanese things, that apples are also for prosperity. And so the fans wanted to know, why is Ryuk eating apples? And the actual writer of the Death Note is, you can't talk to him. This is not a talking to kind of guy. However, the artist was at a convention, and they asked him, and he said, well, because this is the bright red apples, like that one, like bright red apples, and he said, well, I liked the way it looked next to this sort of monochrome monster, this bright red apple. So that's the reason. But I think accidentally, they made a wonderful metaphor here, because so apples represent prosperity and growth and knowledge, and Ryuk consumes them all. Light keeps buying apples for him. He never eats one himself. Everyone is consumed by Ryuk. And in the end, Ryuk consumes Light's soul. And there you have it.
Could it also be that it is Light's heart, and he's eating Light's heart over and over and over again? Light does not have his heart anymore the moment that he enters this story.
Yeah, that would work. Yeah. But it's coincidence. It happens to be a really nice color for I'll show a picture, because the Ryuk is a bit monochrome. He's very black and white. So this is how an accidental thing of oh, pretty red against black and white becomes something much stronger. And because oh my god, this was a ride. Really, I highly recommend watching it. I will warn you, you will be very uncomfortable, but that's the point. The point is that you will be uncomfortable watching this guy go off the deep end, because he's a psychopath. It is supposed to be uncomfortable, but it's a great ride. It's a beautiful anime. 2006 is not the newest. The progression in development of animes becomes more and more. It's not a flashy. It's very beautiful to watch. Artwork is beautiful. They take enough time. They have enough time, and they take enough time to do each part right. And it's so tension filled. Oh my god! Yes, go watch. Yep, highly recommend. And that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.